Welcome to CRM Audio. I'm Joel Lindstrom.
And joining me is Jon Levesque. Everybody who's in the Power Platform community recognizes Jon from his Motivational Mondays and Flow inspirational videos. And it seems like every time I turn around, you got a new video out there, Jon. So
I'm trying.
I am getting ready for conference season. So I'm going to be speaking at Ignite and UG Summit and Power Platform 24 coming up this week. And all those demos have Flow in them. And so I've been doing demos for over a decade. And what I realized is demoing Flow is a little bit different than demoing an application like Dynamics or Power Apps because, a lot of it's background process stuff. And I kind of feel like I'm Julia Child, trying the ingredients come together and pulling the souffle out of the oven and things like that. So
hoping it
I just want to make sure exactly you don't see the five paintings that Bob Ross messed up. He's just putting the pretty trees on there and pulling the finished version out. So I wanted to go to who probably is I said you were the person who demos Flow the most. You correct me and said you're top five, right?
Yeah, I think there's a couple people that do it just as much as I do, so I can't take the number one spot clearly. But I did say I'm surely in the top five.
All right, great. So what I wanted to get, this isn't a why Flow. We got, if you're watching this, Flow is awesome, and you also probably have some idea of how to build at least basic flows. This is more about how do you demo, either in a sales demo, conference, some presentation, maybe where you're showing a flow, and especially conferences, you got people who are there taking notes, they want to go learn and then do their own flows. So I just had a few questions. It's not 20 questions or anything, but it's just some questions about how can I and others viewing or listening to this, how can we be more effective in demoing our flow?
Awesome. That sounds great. I'm ready.
All right. So, and a little background for those of you who you maybe don't listen to CRM Audio, you should, but if you don't, we do a lot of things from a Dynamics and common data service perspective. There's great people like Shane Young and others who do a lot of SharePoint and SQL and other stuff. I do some of that, but most of what I do and definitely my work is all around Dynamics and the common data service and increasingly Power Apps. So with that, we're kind of in a transition or kind of a weird spot right now with common data service. We have two different connectors, three if you count the deprecated Dynamics connector. But common data service, we don't even talk about that one anymore.
No.
So you got common data service, and then you've got common data service current environment that you get when you put things into a solution. So my question for you, given that there are fundamental differences in how they work and certain expressions and formulas that will work with one that won't work with the other, and actions that are in one that aren't in the other, if you were doing a demo for a CDS-based flow, which would you use?
So I think that there's a current answer and there's a what should be coming very soon answer, I think. And the current answer is I tend to just use the CDS connector, not the current environment one. But the current environment one is pretty nice because, you don't have to connect it to certain environments. You don't have to choose any of those things. It's just, here, we recognize your environment. Let's go ahead and give you a set of actions to use. And so that experience is going to get better. And eventually that's the one I will transition to. But currently I'm kind of in the same boat with everyone else. And I'm just using the CDS connector where I choose the environment to work with. It's kind of what I've been used to. And so I haven't made the jump over yet. But very soon, I think everyone should transition over, and myself included. I'll probably lead that way fairly shortly here.
Yeah, I find if you do the current environment one, you got to explain what solutions are, because there's going to be somebody that doesn't understand solutions, and they're going to say, why don't I have this in my environment? Well, you're not using the current environment. Wait, I have current environment selected. No, that's not right. You got, it can definitely lead to some confusing conversations. But I will say, what I love about the current environment connector is how you can have on create and on update, or on update and on delete. And I'm finding it's a lot more forgiving too, because if I just changed one I did from a on creative case to an on update of task. Same flow, didn't have to rewrite it because you can just change that. Okay, so you would say if you were doing a demo at a general conference, you would stick with the standard CDS connector.
I think for right now, yes, just so I don't have to get into solutions and I don't have to get into all the descriptors of how this is working and why. The CDS connector, just very quickly, I can choose my environment and go, and I don't have to really get into all that. So I think, especially if I'm in a quicker talk, if I don't have over 60 minutes, I would stick with the connector for now.
I definitely think they'll do that for my Ignite conference because it's one of those 20-minute community theater sessions, and you really don't have time to show how you build the flow during that time. You just kind of have to show here's what it looks like. Oh, here's the result. Okay,
exactly.
Cool. So what about if you're showing, especially demoing flows that have expressions and things beyond the basic steps, you're going to have people who are going to ask you, hey, can I have a copy of that flow at the end?
Yep.
Do you find when you're doing like a technical conference, would you just plan on providing your documentation or some downloadable or a copy of the flow maybe? What do you generally do?
So I'm going to be honest, I actually should probably be better about that because a lot of people do ask me, and I end up being very manual about it and just one-off sending it to the people who ask me. I should definitely prepare better and have something ready. I do have a boatload of links that I send out, but it's never the thing that I worked on. I just have a lot of follow-up information ready. So it's, for people in the audience who may not have gotten what I followed, I'll say, hey, here's some beginner material that you can check out. And then I'll say, for those of you guys who were right here with me, here's another piece of material for you. And so I tend to give a lot of links out at the end of my talk. Like I'll have a big list and I'll really describe what each one is and tell everyone to take a picture of all those links. And they're very short links so that they can just go type them very easily. I use that aka.ms shortener thing that Microsoft has. Makes it very simple for everyone that way. But you're right.
That's where Ben Balmer has it lucky, because if he's showing connected field service and IoT stuff, there's no way he can share that with them unless he gives them a Raspberry Pi or something, So with flow, it's a flow,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I will say there are some people who are very good about sharing their stuff. We have a spot in the community called the Flow Cookbook. And so if you haven't heard of that or haven't seen that, that's definitely something to go check out.
Power users?
Yeah, on the Microsoft Flow Power Users community.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'll check that out. But maybe if you were proactive, you would maybe put it there ahead of time and then have a link to it. Or do what I do and tell people after the conference you're going to send it to them and then forget.
Well, so I'm actually pretty good. If I tell you I'll send it to you and you ping me for it, I'll send it to you. It's just if awesome. You ask me, hey, will you send it to me? And then I'm like, yeah, sure. And you don't contact me, then you're probably not going to get it.
Okay. So everybody remember that. Make sure you ping John afterwards. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, great.
Now I'm going to get more proactive now so everyone's not pinging me. now I'm going to make a flow.
Right. How do you demo scheduled flow in a realistic way? If you say this is going to run every Thursday at 5 p.m., then you just go, okay, let's pretend it's Thursday at 5 p.m. Or how do you handle that smoothly?
Yeah, so I'll describe what a scheduled flow is, and I'll give a couple examples. So every Friday morning at 5 a.m., I want this job to run and pull this report and send it to my inbox so that when I come in at 7, it's there waiting for me, right? Excuse me. But then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and actually build that flow or show that flow, and I'll just set it to a 1-minute schedule. Every 1 minute, run the flow. And so then they'll actually see, then I'll say, okay, cool. Here we are Friday morning, 5 a.m. Let's go ahead and just set this to 1 minute so it kicks off in a second. We can see that the schedule actually works. And then I'll just wait for it. And I'll usually talk about something for that 1 minute to fill the time. I'll go to my inbox and it'll be there. And then I'll show, once I show the result, then I'll go back into the flow and kind of talk about how it was all made.
Yeah, that's cool. What about approval flows? That's where I find it's a little confusing. Okay, when the salesperson does this, then the sales manager will get notified and they'll do it. And sometimes you have multiple levels of that. I've seen people get really confused looks on their face when you're the same person, but you're maybe switching between browser profiles. Do you have any recommendations if I'm showing an approval flow on how to not utterly confuse the audience?
I saw Serge Luca, one of the Flow MVPs, actually do this best. And the way he did it was when he changed personas, he actually put on a different hat, like a physical hat on his head. So he was one person, and then he was another person, and then he would go back to the first person.
I appreciate that, but John, I've only once in my lifetime found a hat that actually fits my large head, so I'll probably have to think of something else, maybe a different hoodie or something. I don't know.
No, so for me, I tend to just use I'm the worst about it. I won't even try and grant great clarity for them. I'll just use my own account. I'll make me the approver, and I'll make me the submitter, and then I'll have to sit there and usually discuss through that, right? So here I am as the submitter, and now here is the manager, who's also going to be me for the purposes of the demo. Yeah.
Jon Levesque, please approve this approval request from Jon Levesque.
Oh, Jon Levesque, yes. See, I feel like you're interviewing me here to get some tips on how to be the best, and I'm great at coaching others, but as you can tell, I'm really not following a lot of my own best practices here.
But hey, you get a lot of validation if you're the one approving yourself, right?
It's true, because I never get rejected.
Do you have a favorite method for demoing the phone experience, especially in a live conference at a hotel or a conference like Ignite or UG Summit, where you can't depend on the network? Do you have I have numerous ways like Air Squirrels, and on Android devices I use Visor, which works great because you can plug it in. But I just want to know if you were demoing that, what's your go-to solution for that?
I actually have a pretty funny story about this. I got burned one time, like trying to use Air server. Yeah, because I have an iPhone, and so I did this a couple times at a couple conferences. Like the first time it went off without a hitch. The second time I told everyone to download the Flow mobile app there on the floor at the conference before I started the demo. Nothing worked. And honestly, I haven't done it since. So instead, what I do is, instead of actually showing you the mobile experience, I hype it. I talk about how the mobile app is the best thing on the planet, but I don't show it anymore because I got burned.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my workaround is I travel with both an iOS and an Android device, and I test on the network. And sometimes one works, sometimes the other one works, sometimes none of them work. But there you got a backup.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of the program. I was recently during the Flow conference. Vivek did a great presentation with his iPhone for half of it, and I'll have to ask him the name of that software and get you the link so that you can put the link in the description because the name is escaping me.
Right. The other one I've seen several people do, like I think Jim Seeger from EY was the first one I saw do this. They actually had the HDMI adapter for the iPhone or iPad, and they just switched the projector over to that, which worked pretty well. I would just be nervous I would hit the wrong button and then nothing would come through the projector.
Just all over the place. Now you're in a frenzy. Hit all the buttons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So for going with the Julia Child or for British Bake Off show or whatever for people around the world, whatever you're familiar with, the cooking show metaphor. If you have a long or more complex flow that may take more than a short amount of time to run, do you ever do it ahead of time and then show triggering it and then show the result you generate ahead of time?
Absolutely, yes. So I always will have the flows prepared. I will have a few successful runs that run. And so a lot of the time I'll actually try and run the flow live and give it one chance. And, sometimes conference Wi-Fi will cooperate and sometimes it will not. And so if I do get that hang, I'm pretty good to just quickly switch over and say, awesome, so let's go ahead and check out the results. And I just blow right past the fact that it didn't even execute. And the audience a lot of the time will just kind of go with you. They won't even really notice that it didn't finish because if you take them to the right spot and click the right button, like boom, I'm there at the result very quickly. And so I definitely will always have some successful test runs that I can walk through to make sure, because that conference Wi-Fi, man, those demo gods are fickle.
And sometimes I've actually demoed a failure, and one of my favorite things about Flow compared to like Dynamics workflow is how easy it is to troubleshoot. I think that's when the light goes on in people's eyes, like, oh, so you did it. So sometimes planned failure, and I've seen people like Scott Hanselman do that effectively in their demo, where they had a mistake happen, but they planned it into there just so they could show how to recover from them.
Totally. I love Hanselman for that. Actually, he's a great teacher. He's one of my favorites, one of my biggest inspirations, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I always check out his sessions when I can at Ignite. So, okay, you sound like you got some more just awesome demo stories. Any other experiences that were just either really successful or major thing didn't work, and how you recovered from it?
Yeah. Okay. So a really great one, I think, that has wowed quite a few people. It's a very simple one. So at the beginning of the session, I'll do a Flow intro session, and at the beginning, I'll just put up a QR code which connects to forms, and I have people fill out a few questions. And and later on in the demo, when I get through it, I'll actually have a whole pipeline built where, the flow information gets stored somewhere, but there's sentiment analysis run, there's visualization happening, there's follow-up emails that take place, there's a delay that then says, thanks for coming to the session. It's this whole big thing. And what's great about it is I then sit there and wow the audience on how I just kind of used them and this presentation to get better information for my next presentation. And so it's kind of this very interesting thing where it gives them this, every time I just see people's mouths go wide open, because they're like, holy cow, he built this in like 5 minutes, and I could go build something like this and get information from people like that, like cheap, like easy, cheap information I think that's the biggest thing about it, is the insight gathering is one of the biggest things that wows people. Now a total failure. I did a keynote in New York recently, and I had this guy that was like heckling me. Like he kept talking and interrupting my keynote. It totally threw me off. It was the weirdest thing. I got an applause at the end, which I don't know if it was out of kindness or if I did okay, but I felt very thrown off. I had never had someone like so think that this was a conversational session, like a keynote. It was wild.
Wow. Did you find out what his story was, or he just felt like heckling you?
He just had a lot to say.
This, then that, or something, or Zapier.
So he came up to me after, and so he was a behavioral scientist. And in my keynote talk, I do a bit of talk about human psychology, at a fundamental level, nothing crazy deep. And his problem, I think, was he came up to me after and told me that I wasn't explaining the concepts deeply enough, that I was leaving people with too many questions or something. And it was like, hey, dude, listen, like I got 30 minutes. I don't have time to go into a thesis on human activity here. I'm just trying to give you a foundation on user adoption.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know it was at the psychology conference, right?
Yeah. It was wild.
So I love it when MVPs are in the same room together, because especially when one of them is trying to demo something like Twitter integration, and they have a Twitter account that when somebody tweets it does something, because somebody, one of the MVPs is going to start tweeting that thing with obscene stuff or something. I was once doing a demo and Scott was in the audience and he started tweeting out Joel Lindstrom is a great guy or something, just to make it appear up on my demo screen.
That's awesome.
So you gotta be careful with that kind of demo, right?
So actually, real quick story. So recently we were at a conference and we saw a guy who set up an Azure function that when someone follows him on Twitter, it sends an automated follow thing like, thanks for following me. And so he demoed this and all of us just unfollow, refollow, unfollow, refollow, unfollow, refollow. So Twitter,
I think I saw that happen. Which I know, you use Flow for good purposes, but I've realized it's an awesome prank tool too.
Absolutely.
I will admit that I have set up geo tagging to text people whenever I drive by a random location, just with some message. I've set up a flow one time that whenever a certain hashtag was tweeted out, it would text somebody via Twilio, people really like you. To brighten their day up. So, do you have any flow pranks that you've used flow for? Not evil, but for jokes, practical jokes, pranks.
Okay, yes, I do. You're going to like this one too. So, the geolocation trigger. Here's the funniest part about that. A couple of interns made that feature. And when they made the feature, I had the very first demo account to test this thing out so I can make videos and blogs and do my thing, you know? Well, one of the interns was in my office working, and he happened to leave his phone. And so I grabbed his phone and I made a GeoFlow on his phone that when he arrived to the office, he got a text message with my coffee order. And so every day he would arrive to the office and it would say, "Hello, Jordan. I would love a medium dark roast with cream and sugar, but not too much." And you know what the best part was? He would bring it. He would deliver the coffee.
Wow, that's awesome. I made a geo fence rule that whenever I drove home, left home, the lights would turn off, and whenever I came back, the lights would turn back on, which is awesome, except I had my geolocation set too wide, so when I would just drive by my neighborhood, my lights would go off and on, and I think my people in my family started thinking it was possessed or something, because just randomly, lights off, lights on. You got to be careful about those geolocation triggers, because you got to get them set precisely. So
definitely,
this has been awesome. I think nobody's perfect, but I think the biggest thing I've learned from this conversation is just be prepared for the unexpected. And if something doesn't work, audiences are generally forgiving, and having finished versions done ahead of time, so in case your network connection doesn't work or something. Yeah, that's awesome. So you kind of validated what I did, but kind of gave me some new ideas for how I can be better prepared for my upcoming sessions. So I really appreciate that.
The other way around, I think you've given me, like, I need to be better prepared. I'm over here just winging it, and you're like, I'm doing this. What about this? I'm like, man, I haven't even thought about that. So thank you.
That's great about community. We get better together, right? And now I got some good prank ideas too. So that's awesome.
Heck yeah, awesome. Hey, and congratulations at Ignite, and I'll see you there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Good to look forward to meeting you actually face to face in person.
Me too, man. Definitely.